Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shariva Zender, and welcome to the first annual financial results announcement of Paratus Namibia Holdings for the period ended 30 June 2020. Today's event is being live streamed, so a very warm welcome to everyone who's watching online on our Paratus YouTube Namibia channel. Now, if the past few months have been anything to go by, then it's safe to assume that after electricity and running water, access to the internet has become one of the most important utilities for people to get by. And as a telecommunications service provider, we have been fortunate enough to be classified as an essential services provider during the lockdown phases earlier this year. This meant that we were still able to provide our customers with a quality internet connection. And because the effects of the lockdown were not as harsh on us as for many other businesses, it's part of the reason we're here today to present the financial results we have yielded. Our Paratus Namibia MD, Mr. Andrew Hall, will kick off our presentations this afternoon with the operational overview of Paratus as well as prospects for the future. Our Group Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Stefan de Bruin, will be taking us through the financial overview and report on the annual results during his presentation. And last but not least, our Paratus Group CEO, Mr. Barney Harmse, will close off the formalities for this afternoon. And if we're lucky, we might even get a motivational speech from him. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to Paratus. I'd like to welcome you to the Paratus financial results announcement for today. And I'd like to welcome our MD, Mr. Andrew Hall, to the stage. Andrew?
Thank you, Shariva. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrew Hall. Welcome to our first annual results announcement. I will be taking you through the operational side of the business of the last 16 months. I think we all can agree that the last 6 months will definitely go down in the history books, with lockdowns, curfews, and travel bans being concepts we have all become very accustomed to. A bit about Paratus and our services. Paratus Namibia's total headcount is 190 people. We operate a 24/7 network operations center, meaning our customers can contact us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We also do proactive monitoring of all our backbone as well as customer links from here. We have 72 POPs throughout the country, covering all major towns, from where we offer different last mile services. Paratus has 3 initiatives in terms of corporate social responsibility that we focus on. Firstly, being education, we sponsor and support EduVision, an online educational platform through which a teacher conducts a lesson to students in remote areas by means of VSAT and interactive whiteboards. Secondly, we support the Dololo DoBox project, a business incubator for entrepreneurs. And then we have the Paratus Cares Week, a week during the winter where we support a selected 5 charities in terms of their needs. At the bottom of the slide, we are indicating some of the products that we offer. As you can see, we offer a wide variety of products from consumers to enterprises' needs, making us your one-stop shop. Then a bit about our network expansion over the last financial year. Paratus has invested $110 million in infrastructure. Our main focus was fiber rollout, and we deployed 87 kilometers of fiber in Windhoek, 25 kilometers in Swakopmund, 26 in Walfish Bay, 3 in Okahanya, and 10 in Otjiwarongo. We also expanded our LTE footprint in the country by adding the following sites: 2 in Windhoek, 2 in Otjiwarongo, and 1 in Walfish Bay. We also introduced a new fixed wireless internet service in areas where we currently don't offer fiber services. The network for this service was expanded in the following areas, with 10 new sectors in Windhoek, 3 in Grootfontein, 5 in Walfish Bay and Swakopmund, 4 in Otjiwarongo, 1 in Tsumeb, and 1 in Oshakati. In terms of our subscriber growth, the fiber subscriber growth for the financial year was a phenomenal 161% as a result of all the infrastructure deployed. LTE subscriber growth for the financial year was 45%, with a total of 6,566 subscribers at the end of June, with 80% of that being prepaid. I would like to point out the spike on the graph, indicating the increase in consumer demand during the first lockdown. Our ARPU, or average revenue per user, on a fiber subscriber is 1,250 Namibian dollars, and for an LTE subscriber, 970, which is well above industry standard. In the next slide, I'd like to focus a bit on our sales figures. We're going to start off with our recurring sales. This is new contractual business signed for the past financial year. recurring revenue growth of 14% on a 12-month period like-for-like basis, and 14.8% of this new revenue came from our reseller channel. We've had some quite unique sales drives during the year called street activations, where the sales teams would canvass the areas where we were laying fiber by handing out flyers door to door, and then on weekends we would set up a Paratus stall where customers could come and do sign-ups. We also co-branded with a couple of resellers in the smaller towns to offer customers a local service center. We improved our sales process to speed it up and simplify it, and we launched a new website and customer portal, all to improve our customer service. We expect an increase of 14% on the recurring target for the 2021 financial year, again being justified with the planned infrastructure rollout. Next, I would like to move on to our once-off sales. Here we've had a growth of 80% achieved compared to the prior financial year. A big contribution were tenders like, for example, Namport, Standard Bank and NAC, which made up a huge part of this. We do, however, predict a decrease in once-off sales for the new financial year due to the expected slowdown in building projects and development for 2021. COVID-19 and the impact. Paratus has been very fortunate, and we've experienced both an upside and a downside of the pandemic. Connectivity has been the enabler for life to continue as normal as possible, with people working from home and children attending e-learning programs. On the downside, 6.5% of our revenue was immediately at risk, with the tourism industry literally losing their customers overnight. We immediately reacted by offering these customers in the tourism industry discounts in exchange for extended contract periods. On the upside, we saw a sharp rise in consumer demand, as indicated in the earlier graph. Our average top-up revenue over the last 6 months increased with about roughly 50% from top-ups prior to COVID-19. City of Windhoek. I would like to take a moment and pause on this topic that has been covered in the media over the last couple of months. Paratus has been having challenges with the City of Windhoek since 2018, where they have made use of the city police to unlawfully stop us from trenching and laying fiber on the pavement. We've had a total of 14 stoppages over this period, where on the last occasion our equipment was confiscated. We then launched an urgent application to the High Court of Namibia, after which an interdict was awarded against the City of Windhoek. The City of Windhoek was also recently awarded a license by Crown, and we've since asked the court for a declarator on whether Crown could in fact issue this license within the ambit of the Local Authorities Act, which the City of Windhoek is governed by. City of Windhoek has also lodged an appeal against the interdict with the Supreme Court. As a fully licensed operator, the Communications Act is very clear as to our rights and obligations. Paratus has been following strict protocol in terms of way leave notifications to the City of Windhoek, with detailed drawings and on the specified planned work on the pavements and the reinstatement thereof, with compact testing being done by a third-party independent ISO-certified laboratory after reinstatement. The city maintains they own the pavement and have to approve an operator to install infrastructure, which is in clear contradiction with the Communications Act. Being awarded a telecommunications license by Crown, and also being adamant that they must approve the telecommunications operators' way leaves to install fiber infrastructure, would make them both player and referee in our industry. In terms of the future plans of Paratus, we plan to invest another 150 million Namibian dollars in infrastructure in this new financial year, again with the main focus being fiber, where a substantial amount of fiber will be installed in Windhoek, 25 kilometers in Walvis Bay, 25 in Swakopmund, and then also expanding on existing fiber infrastructure in Grootfontein and Otjiwarongo. We will continue to expand our LTE mobile services with new sites in Windhoek, Swakopmund, Okahanya and Rehoboth. And we will also expand on our fixed wireless technology in areas where we don't currently offer fiber, by expanding in Windhoek, Rehoboth, Swakopmund, Walvis Bay and Keetmans. We will also be upgrading our back office systems to increase business process automation and efficiency, and also accommodate for an increased consumer demand. Another focus of Paratus will be SD-WAN, software-defined wide area networking, which has become a popular replacement for traditional MPLS. The key drivers for this being it's more cost-effective than MPLS, as it makes use of broadband internet services, and with last mile access mediums like, for example, fiber, giving customers access to a lot more capacity at affordable rates. Paratus has chosen 2 different SD-WAN vendors to accommodate for this demand. We are also upgrading our private cloud solutions and will be offering additional value-added solutions. We will focus again on the consumer market, which currently only contributes 14% of our monthly recurring revenue. Then lastly, the Equinox Submarine cable. Paratus will be the landing partner for the Equinox cable, a submarine cable with a total capacity of 12 terabits per second. The total value of this transaction to be around 216 million Namibian dollars. The benefits of this cable would be lower internet capacity costs to Paratus, in other words, a reduced cost of sale. It will offer redundancy for international capacity into the country for Paratus as well as other service providers and neighboring countries. If you can remember, we experienced a severe outage of the wax submarine cable that lands at Swakop recently, which had a detrimental effect on internet capacity into the country as well as for some neighboring countries. It will also enable us to sell more capacity on the TKF, Trans-Kalahari fiber, to transit to other countries and service providers. Lastly, Paratus will also be building a data center to the value of 120 million Namibian dollars with an anticipated return on equity invested of 13%. It'll be a Tier 3 data center with a total of 124 cabinets in Phase 1. Google will be the anchor tenant for this project and taking up 40% of Phase 1 of the data center. Some of the benefits: there is currently no Tier 3 or PCI compliant data center available in Namibia. It'll offer Paratus a reliable location to host own equipment, as we currently experience challenges in the data centers we do make use of. It'll attract operators to route traffic through Namibia. DR is becoming more and more critical for business, and the data center will also be vendor neutral, allowing other operators to interconnect. In closing, I would like to thank all our stakeholders for your ongoing support in us and trust in us. I also need to thank the entire team, the board, executive team, management, and all other employees for an absolutely phenomenal performance this past year. You are this company's greatest asset. We have an exceptional team, and the results are a clear testament of your dedication and commitment to this organization. We will continue to focus on customer service and invest in our own infrastructure as well as this country. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stefan de Bruin, and I'll be responsible to take you through the financial results presentation today. During the first few slides of today, I will be providing you with a high-level overview of the income statement and balance sheets of the 2 operating entities, which is Paratus and Paratus Namibia Holdings. And in the later slides, we will be focusing on the detail of the 2 operating companies with a specific focus on Paratus, which is the single biggest investment of Paratus Namibia Holdings. Looking at revenue for the period up until 30 June, we achieved a total number of 431 million. It should also be noted that the year end of this entity has changed from 28 February to 30 June, so we're covering a 16-month period. Over the 16-month period, the revenue growth was 52%, and on a 12-month like-for-like basis, the growth in revenue then was 14%, as was alluded to by Andrew earlier. If we look at our recurring revenue for this year comprised of 86% of the total revenue, and the prior financial year was about 88%, so still a very high number of recurring revenue, which is supported by customer contracts. If we look at the gross profit margin development from 47% to 49.4% is also a remarkable achievement that we will be focusing on a bit later in the later slides. On the operating expense side, our employee cost still makes up the biggest portion of our operating cost at 62%, followed by license fees of 8%, which is expected from a technology company. And then the depreciation on the operational equipment makes up 6% of our total expenses. It should, however, be noted that our network asset depreciation sits in our cost of sales, and this depreciation represents the operational equipment. Then on the advertising side, 6% as well, very important to get our brand out there, as well as the new products that we launch. If we look at our finance cost for the 12 months till the end of February, you'll see There's a bit of an uptick there, 11.7 million versus 10 million in the prior period. That's mostly due to the implementation of IFRS 16 on leases, where that finance charges arise from. Profit before taxation then an increase of 117% on a 12-month like-for-like basis. Profit after tax an increase then of 101%. Our Ebitda number, also something that we are very proud of, ended the year of 101 million on a like-for-like basis, a 53% increase and a 104% increase since the last reporting periods, which was 16 months ago. If we look at the financial position of Paratus Namibia as at 30 June, on the non-current asset side, you will see the increase there from 208 to 272 million. That mostly consists of the fiber deployment and other infrastructure deployment during the year, as well as the right-of-use assets that was brought in terms of IFRS 16. On the current asset side, the increase there is predominantly the increase in the cash balance or cash investments from the rights issue that was concluded earlier this year. If we look at equity as well, here again the increase due to the rights issue. The non-current liabilities consist predominantly of the Development Bank of Namibia loan, as well as the long-term portion of the IFRS 16 lease liabilities. On the current liabilities, again, the short-term portions of both the DBN loan as well as the IFRS 16 lease liabilities. If we move over to the interest-bearing borrowings, a total then of 80 million. If you look at the gearing on our balance sheet, currently running at 20%, the gearing number here is determined as a percentage of total assets, and once again testimony that there is sufficient room in our balance sheet to increase our loan funding. If we look at the income statement of Paratus Namibia Holdings for the period ended 30 June, it should also be noted that from the 1st of January this year, Paratus is now a 100% subsidiary of Paratus Namibia Holdings. So Paratus is effectively consolidated into the Paratus Namibia results from the 1st of January. So the numbers that you see there now reflects the consolidated results of Paratus for 6 months. If we look at total revenue of 173 million, 9 million of that is dividends earned on the money market investments of the surplus cash that we currently have. Another item to consider is the other operating gains of 3.5 million. Included in that number is a deemed profit on disposal of the associate before it was converted into a full subsidiary to the amount of 923,000, and the remainder of that balance is forex gains that we've achieved on our forex accounts as well as our foreign debtors. For the remainder of the operating expenses and finance costs, that all includes then the Paratus results for the 6 months till the end of June. The other item to consider is the profit from equity accounted investments. That is the investment into Paratus as an associate up until the end of December for the 10 months at 6 million versus the 4.5 million of the prior year. If we look at our profit after tax then at 25 million, and then other comprehensive income is then the gains on the revaluation of our properties, and those are the properties that Paratus operate from. The adjustment or the upward adjustment was then 2.9 million, and after deferred tax comes in at 1.9 million, which brings the total comprehensive income then to 27 million for the year as opposed to the 6 million of the prior year. We quickly go through the financial position of Paratus Namibia Holdings. You'll see the total asset number there of 500 million includes the property, plant and equipment of Paratus that was taken over. And then another large component of that number is an intangible asset of approximately 294 million. Now that number has arisen from the difference between the fair value of Paratus at the time when it was converted to a subsidiary versus the net asset value at that time. That difference then, the 294 million was then broken down into further intangible assets by the help of Ernst & Young at the time when we did the share swap. Two of the biggest numbers there to consider is the 240 million, let's call it telecommunications license and spectrum, as well as the 25 million number, which is the right of use of the Boffinet fiber line running through from Beitepos or Charles Hill up until the southern border of Zambia in Ngoma. So those are the intangible assets that we created, and if you look to the right of the presentation, you'll note that these tangible assets are depreciated, and the impact on this year's income statement on that was 2 million for the 6 months. For next year, on a 12-month period, you can expect an impact of 4 million in terms of the depreciation charge on those intangibles. If we look at the equity number increasing from 300 to 500 million, that relates to the share swap where Paratus Namibia Holdings has issued 200 million of shares to Paratus Group Holdings in Mauritius, which also enabled Paratus Namibia Holdings to acquire 100% in Paratus. If we look at the gearing at the bottom of that balance sheet again, if you look on the consolidated group level, the gearing percentage then at 11%, which provides us a sufficient capacity to raise additional debt funding. Now, focusing on the revenue of Paratus Namibia, the cumulative annual growth rate over the last 5 years of our revenue was 18.3%, which is quite phenomenal. We had a 14% growth on a 12 months like-for-like basis, as we mentioned previously, and the yellow area there reflects additional revenue that was created over the 4 months from the end of February to June. Included in our total revenue is 60 million of non-recurring revenue, which relates to land installations on new builds in town. 85% of our revenue is recurring revenue, which is also reflected on the graph below, which is all supported by 2-year agreements and 3-year agreements, which also bodes well for the sustainability of our revenue going forward. If we look at the gross profit percentage of Paratus Namibia, also something that we are very proud of. The gross profit percentage developing them from the 43% to the 49% from 2018. This is mostly due to the rollout of our own infrastructure. So what we've done is we've actually replaced third-party costs with a depreciation charge of our own infrastructure. And another factor that contributed to the increase in the margins is the increase of our customers on our existing network. For example, if we lay a fiber in the street and we have 5 customers on the fiber on which we have a return on investment of 15%, for example, and we add additional customers to that line at a marginal cost, that also contributes significantly to the improved margins in Paratus. Looking at the Ebitda numbers as well, also something we are very proud of, 53% growth on a 12 months like-for-like basis. And this definitely mirrors the ability to generate cash flows from operations. If you look at our cash flows from operations for the period till 30 June, standing at 111 million versus our Ebitda number of 101 million. And similarly to the previous financial year of February 19, where our Ebitda number came in at 49 million and our actual cash flow from operations was 53 million. Then the disparity between the profit after tax and the Ebitda is then mainly due to the depreciation charge of our infrastructure. And in this year it's about 50 million in depreciation that contributed to the Ebitda number. On the operating expenses side of Paratus, also a good achievement. We experienced a 4% growth on a 12-month like-for-like basis from the prior year. We had a very proactive effort to manage our cost. The challenge is, however, the growth in the revenue and our infrastructure deployed, which puts a lot of pressure on our resources. We as a management still focus on the maintenance of our service levels, because we find that our maintenance levels distinguishes us from other internet service providers in the market, so we will not compromise on our service levels in terms of cost management. Looking at the profit before tax, we had 117% growth on a 12 months like-for-like basis, and we achieved that through a combination of the growth in revenue, as alluded to earlier, the improved operational margins, as well as the cost management measures that we've implemented. And that all contributed to the excellent growth in the net profit before tax. Just a bit of an overview of the Copics of Paratus Namibia as of 30 June. You'll notice that we've expended 101 million in Copics for this year. About 13 million was expended towards the LTE network to extend our coverage, and 82 million of that was for the infrastructure rollout of fiber most predominantly, and 5 million approximately for our own operational assets. If we look at the 2 financial years, 2018 and 2019, we started the construction of the Trans-Kalahari fiber link running from Swakopmund till Buitenpost in 2018, and we've completed the project in 2019, and which contributed to the 63 million and 70 million capex expenditure during those 2 years. So TKF has proved to be a significant asset to Paratus, as we were able to export capacity into neighboring countries, and we've also been able to save a lot of cost to provide our local customers with bandwidth from the wax lining cable. Moving on to the next slide, looking at the debtors aging of Paratus Namibia. I think one of the key concerns that was noted was, due to COVID-19, we've been able to generate good revenue, but the other flip side of the coin is, how did we manage to collect those, let's call it, customer receivables. If you look at the yellow and the blue graphs, it shows you the subsequent to 30 June aging brackets. So the age buckets are still very well under control subsequent to 30 June. On the expected credit loss rates, we've increased them as follows. In other words, that's your provision for bad debts. So we've increased that from 1% last year to 2% this year on the current cost bucket category. On the 91 or the 31 to 90 days past due, we've increased that from 7% to 11%. And then on the 90 days plus past due, we've increased that provision from 22 to 27%. So a very prudent provision for bad debts there, which we are very comfortable with going into the new financial year. The benefit that Paratus, however, has is the benefit of terminating the service of customers if they default on their payments. Moving on to the next slide, we look at the cash and cash equivalents of Paratus Namibia Holdings and Paratus. We'll see that the cash development from the financial year 2018 to 2020, and that all has improved due to the corporate activity during the 3 financial years 2018 to 2020. If we look at the company, Paratus Namibia Holdings, or previously Nimbus, was listed on the stock exchange on 6 October 2017. And during that listing, we raised a total capital amount of 102 million. In the same year, Paratus Namibia Holdings has acquired a 26.5% stake in Paratus, and that resulted in the reduced cash balance in 2018 of Paratus, or Paratus Namibia Holdings. And the cash injection that Paratus received in that year of 75 million spurred the start of the aggressive infrastructure rollout strategy of Paratus. If you look at the 2019 financial year, Paratus Namibia Holdings concluded a rights issue in which they raised an additional 103 million in capital, and that was the reason for the additional cash raised during that year. And in 2020, Paratus Paratus Namibia concluded a rights issue where they raised an additional 50 million, of which Paratus Namibia Holdings contributed 25 million, and Paratus Group Holdings in Mauritius contributed an additional 25 million to bring the total capital raised to 50 million, hence the increase in the total cash and cash equivalents as at 30 June 2020. If we look at the share price versus net asset value in the graph, you can clearly see that the net asset value has increased since the listing in 2017, while the share price hasn't shown or reflected the same movement. So the share price has grown significantly up until the 11 Rand value and then stabilized at around 11. And that's mostly because of the sell-off on the local stock exchange, because of the weak economic condition or situation that Namibia is finding itself in. If you look at the basic earnings per share from February 18 till February 20, the accumulated annual growth rate on our earnings per share was 69%. We had a 72% growth on a 12-month like-to-like basis, and it was driven mainly by the corporate activity and the earnings growth of Paratus. And this is likely to improve now as we invest our cash reserves into infrastructure, because currently on our cash reserves we're earning interest of around 5%, whilst on the investing it into infrastructure we can get return on investments of up to 18%. Looking at the future planning and approvals obtained, as Andrew has alluded to earlier, The board has approved additional or further 150 million in infrastructure deployment, which we all know bodes well for revenue and then for the improvement in our operating margins. The board has also approved the construction of that Tier 3 data center in Windhoek to the value of 120 million, and then also the construction of the cable landing station as well as the power feeding equipment, which will link us to the Equinox subsea cable that is currently or under process of being constructed by Google. So this Capex project then is to be funded from our own operational cash flows, our cash reserves, and additional debt funding. If we look at our debt funding, we're looking at additional debt funding to the value of approximately 200 million to be raised through a listed program. 80 million of that money will be utilized to refinance our existing debt at a lower interest rate, and then the remainder of that facility will be used to finance our data center, our cable landing station, and the power feeding equipment that goes along with it. So the current low gearing that we currently have on our balance sheet definitely warrants the additional debt funding, and we are confident that the strategy will optimize our capital structure through a reduced weighted average cost of capital, which at the end of the day will provide value to our shareholders. From my side, that's all from a financial perspective. Thank you very much.
Are we live? Are you sure? Sorry. Darren, stand still. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Barney Adamse, and I'm the CEO for the Paratus Group of Companies. Thank you very much for inviting me, and that's about my whole speech. Thank you very much. I'll see you downstairs. Just joking, I'm back. I want to make life difficult for Darren. He stands behind the camera and he's not focused at the moment. Okay, let's get a little bit more serious. A friend of mine always says that the secret to a successful business is that you need 3 critical ingredients: fun, value, and profits. So let's quickly kick off with the fun part. If you will just allow me a second here. It won't take long, Darren. Relax your bokies. I'm just quickly phoning my mom. It's okay. Thanks. Hallo ma. That's right. Hallo ma. Hoe gaan het in elkaar, Anja? Is het warm? Is dit? Hou een beetje aan. Maar, kan my sien?
Nee, ek sien nie nou vir jou nie.
Maar hoe moet my hare gelyk nou? My hare right.
Asfaal, ja, jy's grys, joh. Ja, die kyk lekker right, verkeerde kant toe.
Okay. My hare is gryser as ma se, nee.
Ek dink so, ja.
Okay.
Jy's...
Maar, hoor gou hierso. My 3 susters het in elk geval die airtime nie. Is ek die mooiste kind in die familie. Maar luister hier so, ek kan ma se maandelikse allowance opstoot. As ek die mooiste kind van al 4 kinders. Daar sê Shap. Okay, ma se allowance word opgestoot. En die slimste ook. Okay, great. Ma se allowance word nog gedubbel. Okay. Kyk verder. Okay, bye. Alright, just quickly I have to get that out of the way. Mom's looking for an increase in allowance, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so this is truly an historical event. This is our first live broadcast on YouTube, and it's very convenient for us now to announce Paratus Namibia Holdings financial results for June 2020. I want to say thank you to Andrew and to Stefan. Stefan, don't hide. I'm going to ask you another few questions. Presentations, well done, boys. Job well done. If I may, I just want to quickly perhaps go back into our history and focus on infrastructure deployments and investments we had in the past to illustrate our humble beginnings, our modest beginnings. And, you know, for our very first project in Namibia, right at the beginning phase, I think the original amount we needed was in the region of 350,000 Namibia dollars. And for that, we got our very first overdraft with a local bank. It progressed, and then the next big one was for 1.5 million Namibia dollars. That one we needed for our regional pop rollout in Namibia, where I think we bought only 6 routers, one for Windhoek and then for 5 other towns. And then the business grew, and every time, it was either an overdraft or it was project financing that we did with the local banks. And the next big one was when we wanted to buy another company and when we wanted to construct this office building in which we sit today. And for that we needed 100 million. And then afterwards there was no stopping. We just grew from strength to strength, and the size of the business increased, and so did our African footprint as well. And then all of a sudden we started needing, not just $100 million, but multiples of 100 millions. And yes, that's where we are today. Paratus Namibia Holdings, that's listed on the Namibian Stock Exchange. We declared a dividend during May of this year, and we are declaring now again a dividend, second time this year. As far as we're concerned, truly an unbelievable performance by an unbelievable bunch of people, group of people. At this stage, I think it's also fair to mention perhaps just the team from Cirrus Capital, remarkable team that took us to the regional listing, and that's been at our side since the regional listing, and up until date has been a great companion in the way forward, and a team that we can rely on. Now, as you can very well imagine, the most difficult challenges we faced so far in our entire history was in this year, and especially during the last 7 months. Remember, we face huge risks when it comes to business and trying to face these challenges during very difficult economic times. But we prevailed, and we did well. As always, except for the dividends, we declared we must leave enough cash on the table to roll out more infrastructure. Except for the cash available at the moment, and looking at the projects that both Andrew and Stefan spoke about, which they outlined, we have to leave enough cash on the table to help us with these projects. Now, except for the cash available on the table, we have to, like Stefan pointed out in a few slides ago, we have to apply for additional debt funding. We will tackle the other big jobs, the other big projects in Namibia, and that we will service via our cash flows. Thinking about the investments that we've made so far and looking at our future, in the past 5 years, we've invested more than 350 Namibian dollars into infrastructure in Namibia. Various projects, and mostly infrastructure. And looking at the next 2 years alone, it's going to be well over 300 million just for Namibia in infrastructure rollouts. Now, if we have to look at this seriously and we have to look at the performance of Paratus Namibia Holdings, I did get the okay from Stefan. Our turnover for Namibia was 431.9 million. I did ask Stefan for permission if I can say approximately 432 million. That was the Paratus Namibia Holdings contribution to the entire group. Now, it's important to note that that 432 million that the Paratus Namibia Holdings brought in up until June 2020 represents approximately 40% of the total revenue of the group, which is really, it's been a tremendous effort, and it's been a tremendous achievement for Paratus Namibia Holdings. As you can imagine, the financial results of the group is reported in US dollars, just because we own and operate multiple networks in a number of countries in Africa. And when the currencies in these countries weaken against the US dollar, and we still have to strive for a positive growth curve in terms of all our combined businesses, it puts additional stress on us. So the question is, how does one achieve what we've achieved? The objective here is to grow faster than the weakening or the devaluation of the currencies that we are exposed to. You must grow faster than the final impact of the international pandemic like COVID-19. You must grow faster than a slowing down economy. You must grow faster than all of the above, thrown at you at once, at one time. You know, there's not even a break in between. And we've been able to do that throughout Africa as a team. And talking about investments, our future investments, it's not only Namibia that we invest heavily in, and infrastructure rollouts in Namibia. Right now we are also busy with additional rollouts across Africa. We're talking about huge projects, massive investments already well on the way. We'll continue to invest in Namibia and in Africa. We believe in our future in Namibia and the rest of Africa, where we operate currently, and the future countries where we are planning to operate. Now, especially during these difficult times, you know, it's difficult for someone to imagine the hard work that we have to put in. Now, it's how well you strategize, it's how well you build, and then most importantly, how quickly you can execute. It takes superhumans, and they are all the people that works for our organization. It seems that we have a good track record, or well, our track record suggests that the tougher the environment, the more difficult the tasks, the more challenges we face, the better we perform. With that in mind, Andrew, can I quickly ask you to come forward, please? But you must hurry up. Okanya is running out of airtime. I would just like to point out, we've got, at the moment online, people in Russia, people in Scotland, people in South Africa, people all over the world is currently watching. Is Andrew in the shot? Okay. Andrew, quickly, one question, perhaps two or three. Why do you work for this company?
Because it gives me great satisfaction to work for such a disruptive company. There's always a new challenge that comes up. I absolutely enjoy the people that I work with, and I can also say that I've learned a lot working for this company.
Do you believe in this country and its future?
Yes, I do.
Is that why we're putting in all the effort?
Correct.
Thank you very much. Andrew, I'm going to recommend to the board that we also give you a slight increase in your allowance. Thank you very much. Okay. If, on a closing note, like I mentioned in the beginning, a friend of mine that also stays in Okanya always makes the comparison, makes the assumption that you wanna run a successful business, you must do three things, or it must be present: fun, value, and profits. I personally believe that when you focus a lot on the first two, namely fun and value, and when you empower people, profits come automatically. And that's my end note. Maybe I must just use 30 seconds to say thank you to Andrew and the entire Namibian team. I must thank the entire Namibian Exco for a job well done. I must thank all the managers in Namibia for a job well done. I want to thank each and every member of our staff in the entire Namibia on a job well done. Excellent. What you've accomplished is superhuman. What you've accomplished is unparalleled, especially during these times, especially during these difficult times. Awesome job, well done. And we have survived this. We've done well. Now, imagine if the economy picks up. Imagine if COVID disappears. Imagine if some of these challenges goes away. Imagine how well we can do. With that, I want to thank you, and that's it. Goodbye. Check you next time online.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And in true form, we got a little bit more than a motivational speech. We truly can see that fun and value will definitely equal profits at the end of the day. It is truly amazing to see the results that we yielded, especially considering the tough economic times that we're in, as well as the challenges mentioned earlier. So that concludes the formalities for this afternoon's event. The presentations, as well as the full financial report, is available on our investor relations website. You can find it at invest.paratas.africa. That's invest.paratas.africa. From me, Shariva, and on behalf of the entire Paratus Namibia Holdings team, thank you once again to our viewers for tuning in and for our very first annual results announcement, and I wish that you have a wonderful day further. From us, the truly disruptive team, thank you and goodbye.
Go far with Paratus. Go further with Paratus Fiber. Paratus, offering high-speed, reliable fiber connectivity, starting from only 620 Namibian dollars per month. Unlimit your lifestyle and visit na.paratus.africa for more information.